What is in the head of artists when they draw? This series is about that. 4 artists drew 4 original artworks based on one common concept, and they share their thoughts on it. Today I'm joined by Jaider, DaNKeL137 and JGM. Links to these amazing guys are in the description. Today's concept consisted of these points: a mysterious object and a character discovering this object. The concept is very vague, and I was surprised when I realized how many things it can mean. Look at how each of us interpreted this concept and enjoy this new episode of our Deviation Jam.
Hey, was geht? My name is DaNKeL. So the first thing I did was to make the background for the drawing. I imagined something like a cutout out of a 3D level, but made in pixel art. It's very easy to make because it's just a box with a sky plane behind it. So one point of the challenge was to have a big mysterious object, and I decided to make a big human hand. And this was the hardest and time-consuming part of this drawing because I just never did hands. So I just took this picture and tried to make it in pixel art. As you just saw, I started with basic shading colors and added some details over time to the hand. I struggled a lot with the finger shapes and had to redo them a lot of times. And after I finished this drawing, I realized I should have drawn something different than the hand because I didn't have any time to make more or better ground objects. And I have to say, this whole challenge was a great learning experience because I did something new and it really made me even a little bit better at drawing. Up to this point, half of the time is spent on the hand, and I thought I can finally do something else. So I made this guy and also started making an enemy for him. At first I wasn't sure how he should look like, so I decided to make his face first. I like to make this kinda scary style because it's very easy to make with his big open mouth and scary teeth. And now that the face is done, I can give him a body. So I didn't want to spend too much time on the body, so I decided to give him just a basic shape and just some devil horns because why not, it just looks cool. So the next thing I did was to add some shading, and as you can see, with some basic shading it adds already a lot of details. And I wish I had more time because this was really fun to make. I also gave them some shadows to make them look like they are really there in the 3D space. And then I finally connected the control stick to the enemy. At this point I was pretty happy with the overall composition of this picture and decided to spend more time on the hand and maybe add some more details and refine it a little bit more. Because most of the stuff here is just basically shading and color work. I don't really have a specific color palette because I just take random colors that I think look good. It might be faster to use the preset colors, but I didn't think about this and just wanted to draw something. So here are the final touches on the hands, so basically also just shading and nothing really special. At this point I think I had something like 10 or 15 minutes left, so I decided to draw a cactus because the ground looked like a desert to me. Then I copied it a couple of times and placed it around the canvas because I didn't have the time to add more details to it. I also made some simple clouds, and this was also very simple to make because it's just one color and I added some shading at the bottom. And the last thing I did for this drawing was the ground. It's also very simple to make because it was just a lighter and a darker color, and I placed it just random around the world. And also the same for the edges here. I still thought that it looked very empty, so I decided to make some more plants and place them around. I'm really happy with the final picture, and I'm also thankful to be part of this really awesome challenge.
I'm Jaider, happy to be here, taking part in John Ives' challenge of making this piece in just 1 hour. I must admit that's a restriction I have a hard time dealing with. This is actually my attempt number 2 at this. I had to scrap the first one because it started out too ambitious and I ended up rushing it with poor results. This time around, instead of working on a palette from scratch, I used Carry Lake's Resurrect palette. It's vibrant and well balanced, and I think perfect for this kind of speed painting exercises. I started with sketch on paper just to lay down the scene and a few design elements. I knew it had to be something simple enough I could paint in 1 hour. I went for a sort of bizarre divinity with most of its body missing and some big angel wings. So I started this attempt number 2 in a much smaller canvas than the first, with a little pixel sketch of the scene and the being. Then I went on to fill basic color shapes so I would get a general feel of where the palette was taking me. I'm not super comfortable using other people's palettes, I prefer making my own, but after failing miserably at the first attempt, I felt I could use a helping hand. I went on to do the first level of shading and adding detail. You will notice my process is a mess. It seems like some of the steps of it are in the wrong order. Well, maybe they are, I don't know. I work mostly by intuition and that's how it works for me. I try to gradually add more shading and lighting and figure out the outlines. I did a big chunk of this using my display tablet so I could quickly do flowing lines and shapes and use the mouse only for fixing small details. I used the pressure tool on Sprite with the Bayer dither so I could quickly put some noise in the background. I used the shading tool combined with brush size by pressure to get volume on the grassy hills. And I think that's it for the basic image. I will now use all the spare time I have to polish the shapes a bit more, add some shading, look for stuff that feels kind of odd, and decided in the final minutes that I could improve the aura, so I went for it. And it's done. Thanks for watching, and thank you John for having me.
Hey, my name is JGM. I'm currently working as a video editor and I also do some 2D and 3D freelance work on the side. I use 3 programs to make this scene: SpeedTree, Cinema 4D and Houdini. I started off with making the tree and the character first. Both of those objects had to be made in different programs. So once they were done, I opened up Houdini and started working on bringing everything together. One of the biggest problems that I faced while making this scene was that I didn't like how it looked once it was done. And that's something that happens to me often when I'm trying to create something in a small amount of time. And when I'm trying to create an art piece and it doesn't turn out the way I wanted it to, it ruins my whole day. Or at least until I can come up with something that I'm happy with. And unfortunately, that is exactly what happened when I was working on this scene. And once it was done, I hated it. I hated how the trees were too pointy, the fact that the box which the character is looking towards didn't look as huge as I wanted it to, and that the character didn't look as good as I wanted it to, and so on. And so because of all those reasons, I felt miserable and spent days thinking of what else I could make that would look better. But everything that I wanted to make would have taken a lot longer than just an hour. And I still had client work that I had to do, but couldn't do because I wanted to make something that looked better than this piece. At this point, I was also running out of time. But in the end, I decided I'm not going to make another piece and I'm going to stick with this one. Now I'm sure some of you guys face the same problem as well. And I found that doing these little art challenges helped me a lot with breaking this habit of ruining my day over a sketch or an art piece that didn't turn out the way I imagined it to. So for those of you who are dealing with the same problem, I would recommend you guys take part in challenges like this one. Limit your time to make something and know that it will not be perfect. But yeah, this is something that I wanted to talk about and I hope this helps some of you guys.
I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to draw, so I started looking through my Pinterest saved images. I found 4 reference images, which you can see on the right of my screen, and the concept struck me right away. A samurai finds a Japanese temple in the middle of a desert. You can notice how much time I've put into drawing this Japanese temple. It's a little bit funny because, despite my big love for samurai, I barely remember how these temples look. That's why it took the most time out of everything else. The perspective I chose for it was uneasy as well. I wanted the corner of it to be seen, so I had to experiment with it so it actually looks like a side of the temple and not one of its walls. The fact that a Japanese temple was found in the middle of a desert must have added this mysteriousness required by the concept. It was meant to provoke confusion and interest. Looking at the result, I realized I couldn't fully visualize these mysterious vibes, so I think I haven't fulfilled the gem's concept. For me, the word majesty comes to my mind rather than mystery when I look at the result. I think if I changed the palette and added some fog or a sandstorm in the middle layers, it could come out more mysterious, but oh well. Another controversial thing was the color palette I used. On one hand, it has the right colors, except for the sky for which I didn't find the right kind of blue. On the other hand, it didn't have enough shades of orange, which confused the middle and the back layers. I had to apply some hue shifting for all the layers so it would be easier to distinguish them. We can also notice that the rocks in the foreground have no shadows. I thought that would look quote-unquote artistically interesting to use the sand color as the base color for them. But now I realize they still have to cast some kind of shadow. On the positive side of things, I love the foreground, like really. More specifically, the rocky pillar on the left, the character, and the shadow element of both. I'm seriously amazed by how awesome it looks to me. It's so expressive. I think it even could be reused for a lot of other landscapes. I also like that if you scale the image down, it doesn't look too bad, as if the eye perceives it differently than it is when opened in full screen. Overall, I think it went quite well. Not very great, considering my failure to properly communicate the concept, but still a good job for 1 hour. And that's it. Remember, you are creative, and you can be whoever you want. The whole point of this series is not to make you an artist, but to encourage you to become who you want to be. Don't be afraid of the obstacles on your way. Not everything may be in your favor, and you will make mistakes inevitably, but it doesn't matter as long as you're stepping toward your dreams. Just like we have drawn our pieces despite the problems that occurred along the way. Thanks Oda Jaider, DaNKeL137 and JGM for joining me today. By the way, if you still haven't seen the previous episode, go check that out. What have you discovered for yourself in this video? Did it inspire you to do something, and if so, what exactly? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to know. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, share and subscribe. It was Ives, and until next time.